Shalom, everyone. This is Pastor Roy Blight from Messiah House here in Lake Worth, Florida. And today, as we begin our teaching here on as it was in the days of Noah, this is a very interesting one. This has a lot to do with history, and this has to do with Mount Hermon and the things that have happened there and the significance of it, and the tribe of Dan, which is in the Bible, which we're going to be getting to, and understand that this has to do a lot with the occult world. It has to do a lot with the beliefs that certain people have around the world that they believe that are so important and have something to do with the things that are happening even today. But understand that the Bible tells us specifically what is going to happen, who is who, what is what. And we want to understand, especially today as we begin on the season of the shofar, we're blowing the shofar because people who want to deceive the body of Christ and in fact the whole world with these ancient phony Babylonian mystery religion beliefs, they do believe that they are on top of what the history says. Listen, the only light that is in the world is the light that comes through the scriptures. And the light that we're looking at today is from the scriptures, and it also points out the darkness that's out there. And that's precisely what we're looking at in the studying Mount Hermon and the tribe of Dan. So this is season of the shofar. I'm Pastor Roy Blight. So let's get going today with what our teaching has. Understand that the context of everything that we're looking at, as it was in the days of Noah, we want to understand specifically what is going on. And this is something that many people aren't aware of. There's those that are into these kind of things, they think they're on the right side of history, and they couldn't be more wrong because they're completely in darkness. But notice that it says, as it was in the days of Noah. These are the same kind of beliefs and thoughts that were there before the flood and even through the flood. A flood is coming, but the flood we're looking at is something that is God's judgment is going to judge all of this. It's not going to be with water the next time. God promises it will be with fire, and that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the subject now, and this will be a 4-part series on Mount Hermon and the tribe of Dan, and they are connected. That's why I put them together. You could take each one separately and study it, but why not just look at them together so you'll get the gist of exactly spiritually what's happening here as we look at it. Now, Mount Hermon is in the north part of Israel's it's between Israel, Syria, and Lebanon. It's in the mountain area. It's a high peak. It can actually be seen from the Sea of Galilee. It's only 30 miles away from the Sea of Galilee, and it's a place where Jesus even went to himself. And let's discuss all this. This is part 1. Remember, this is a 4-part series, so we're going to be trying to tackle this vast subject, but it's an important subject, and that's why we want to talk about it on Season of the Shofar. We're looking at Mount Hermon. We're looking at the tribe of Dan. That was one of the 12 tribes of Israel, and left in obscurity when Israel was judged, and nobody's seen them again much. But their belief theories and the things that they were about are very much involved in today's politics, in today's royalty, into the very setting that we're seeing even today. So the tribe of Dan plays an important role, and we're going to look at exactly how and why and what this ancient tribe means to the end day scenario as it was in the days of Noah, and also the tribe of Dan. And we want to understand that the tribe of Dan, their first emblem was given to them was that of a serpent, and they changed it to that of an eagle, which is something that you want to keep in mind as we study this ancient myth. Now, when we study before the flood, we look at the book of Enoch, and we see that there's things in Enoch that have to do with Mount Hermon, and there was 200 watchers. These were angelic beings who rebelled against God and came down, and they landed on Mount Hermon, and they began their conquest, or trying to make a conquest of planet Earth by procreating with human women, and these human women's children of these watchers became what we know as the Nephilim, the giants of ancient lore. This is where your Greek mythology comes from, and your Roman mythology, and every culture in the world, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Native American cultures, the South American cultures, the Aztecs, the Mayans, and so forth. All of them go back in their history to these Nephilim, the offspring of the Watchers and human women. This is central to Bible prophecy. This is central to all the cultures of the world. We want to understand what it's all about. In Matthew 24, it says, verse 4, and Yeshua answered and said to them, take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. One thing you want to keep in mind is that Satan knows about the Messiah. Satan has an understanding of who the Messiah is, especially now, and understanding that the Messiah came and brought salvation to mankind through the blood of Jesus Christ. But understand that Satan is still active in the minds and in the hearts of people all around the world, trying to dissuade them from the Messiah, the true Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. And he wants to deceive people, and many people are being deceived today in the beliefs and the patterns and the systems that we have going on earth. And today we're looking at this tribe of Dan. Now, the tribe of Dan, originally, they had their portion given to them south near the Mediterranean Sea in the south of the land of Canaan. And they moved on their own up to be near the Mount Hermon. And this is very significant because everything that they wanted to get into was there, as far as the occult, as far as spirituality, as far as trying to be something that they thought was better for them. And this is the center point of what we're talking about. Today, I wanted to, in the Western culture, I want to talk about the rise of the Phoenix. And people don't understand, people don't care about this much, but people that are into the occult, they understand perfectly what the rise of the Phoenix is all about. The rise of the Phoenix is out of the occult. And I feel bad for the people in Phoenix, Arizona, but that has really nothing much to do with it. The rise of the Phoenix. We're looking about the ancient Phoenix, the myth of the Phoenix, and everything that the Phoenix had to do with where we are today in planet Earth. What is the relationship between the Phoenix and Mount Hermon? Well, let's look at this. To begin our study of Mount Hermon, remember, European mysticism was not dead at the time the United States of America was founded. Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism and many of these ancient belief systems coming out of Babylon, they were very big into the mysticism that had to do with Mount Hermon and the tribe of Dan, and they still do, as were the founders of the United States. These people were Freemasons as well, and they understood these beliefs. The hand of Babylon, the hand of the Babylonian mysteries used in the establishment of the new American government is the same signature of the mysteries that are seen on the Great Seal of the United States of America. Those aren't my words. Those are words that have been penned by Freemasons themselves, like Manly Hall. And understand that this is a centerpiece of the history of the United States of America. And when we look at things that are out there that represent the United States of America, you look at the Great Eagle as the seal of the United States, it's actually a phoenix. This is the Great Seal of the President of the United States. And all of this entire symbol of this so-called eagle and so forth, it has to do with the occult. It is very symbolic of the things that are in occultism. And we see this going forward. This is the Great Seal of the United States of America. It's the same thing. The sacred number 13 is often used. The red and white stripes go all the way back to the Phoenicians and to the rise of the Phoenix. Careful analysis of the seal discloses a mass of occult and Masonic symbols, chief among them the so-called American eagle. And we look at the phoenix and you say, well, that looks a lot like the eagle, but you'll notice that it's not an eagle, it's actually a phoenix. The American eagle upon the Great Seal is actually a conventionalized phoenix. And we want to understand this goes all the way back to when you study Freemasonry about America's secret destiny, the desire to have a one world religion and so forth. It all comes down through these beliefs and the spiritual vision and the founding of a nation that they thought that America's destiny was founded in these Babylonian beliefs that have to do with the rising of the Phoenix and a new world order and all of these things we're seeing today that are being put into place. The thoughts and the desires and the establishment is something that goes on throughout our history. There's a great book called The Secret Destiny of America by Manly P. Hall, and he backs up and he puts out all these esoteric thoughts that are there that they have today that have to do. Most people think nothing of the symbolism that you see in our money and in our buildings and so forth in America. They all have their background in Masonic beliefs, going all the way back to Babylon, going all the way back to Mount Hermon, going all the way back to the Phoenicians. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about the rise of the Phoenix. And Phoenix this is the last word of Manly Hall's statement of the founding of America, is key to the secret destiny of civilization. They believe that the Phoenix itself is the key secret destiny of all mankind. Understand, this is very important to them, and we want to look at this a little bit and where this has come from and where they think that it's going. It explains the occult design behind the formation of the United States, the events at Roswell, New Mexico, and Mount Hermon. All this has to do with the occult. All this has to do with things that have been formulated by people that they think they know more than the Bible. And when we see this is hidden in plain sight all throughout our culture. For example, this is a picture here of Paramount Pictures. This is their logo. And those 22 stars that are around supposedly Mount Hermon. You know, this has been out there. What are they thinking that this is? Those 22 stars represent the 22 of the leading watchers that came down on Mount Hermon that we see in the book of Enoch. Now, if they didn't think it was important, why would they make this the front and center of their occultic beliefs that has influenced so many millions of people at Paramount Pictures? Because they're part and parcel of this belief system that we're talking about at Mount Hermon and the tribe of Dan. And this is what we're exploring today. We want you to understand where all this came from. Now, the logo of Paramount Pictures starts off with 22 stars falling and coming down a mountain. The stars represent the watchers, the fallen angels from the book of Enoch. The mountain represents Mount Hermon, the mountain they had landed on. And yes, why the 22 stars again? And I'll tell you, this has to do with the watchers who landed there. These 22 angels are named in the book of Enoch as the conspirators of the pact made between themselves on Mount Hermon to corrupt humanity and create abominations with mankind. This is the essence of the spirit of Antichrist, the great enemy of Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the living Son of the living God, the creator of heaven and earth. These are their enemies who wanted to establish their kingdom on God's planet, the Lord's planet, planet Earth. So we see at Mount Hermon, this was the domain of the watchers. This is where they came down to. This Mount Hermon, to those that are in the occult, is the sacred place of all the occultists. And understand that this is very important to them. Now, Scripture tells us a third of the angels from heaven, and of this third, 200 of them landed on Mount Hermon. So 1/3 of the host of heaven rebelled against the Lord our God, and 200 of them were these watchers that came to Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon, interestingly, is located at 33.3 degrees north, the same longitude as the UFO incident at Roswell, New Mexico. And you'll notice that the 33.3 is very sacred to the Masons because of their use of the numbers of 33, 22, and 11, and so forth. 33.3, that has to do with the 1/3 of the angels that fell, and they're commemorating it, and they see this as their sacred mount at Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon has always been acknowledged as the central location of satanic worship, including fallen angels, idolatry, and pagan rituals. And right there at the foot of Mount Hermon is Caesarea Philippi. Caesarea Philippi was built next to the quote, the gates of Hades, or the gates of hell, which is a large, seemingly bottomless cavern in the base of Mount Hermon that was the focal point to all sorts of pagan worship and human sacrifices going in the area. The whole place is dedicated. It's like a theme park to Satan. It's dedicated to occultic worship, pagan worship, and everything that is acknowledged as the enemy of Jesus Christ, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, Elohim of the Bible. So let's get back to this Phoenix and where this all came from. Well, the Phoenix, as we see it, looks like it's a bird that's rising. These mysteries can be solved if we just understand just this one word, which is the word Phoenix, and you can see where it comes from. Back in the days when Mount Hermon, as I said, is located pretty centralized between Syria, Israel, and Lebanon, and it is a mountain chain. But to just the north and northwest of this mountain chain is the ancient nation of Phoenicia, where the Phoenicians come from. And we want to understand this is where this occultic network began. And the main cities in this Phoenicia area was Tyre and Sidon. Now, the word Phoenix is derivative of the Greek name for Phoenicians, the ancient people that inhabited the east coast of the Mediterranean Sea, or it should be the west coast of the Mediterranean Sea. And this is an ancient civilization of people that were influenced by these watchers and so forth, and they patrolled the Mediterranean Sea. Though called Phoenicians, which actually means distressed by the Greeks, the Phoenicians referred to themselves as Sidonians. Of course, that's where the city of Sidon came from. Ancient historians venerated the Sidonians. Sidonian navigators were especially sought by the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians, and the Greeks. They were very famous. They were very powerful. They were very well known as being the consummate sailors among their people of their day. Their capital city was named after Sidon, the firstborn son of Canaan, the son of Ham. Now remember, Ham was one of the original occupants of Noah's Ark and Noah's youngest son. The Sidonians were considered masters of science and magic. They claimed to possess a civilization existing for 30,000 years, according to their belief system. And they were great sailors and navigators. The Greek alphabet was transferred directly from the Phoenician Sidonian script and applied to the sounds of the language of the Greeks. Hence, this is where we get the meaning of the word phonetic. It comes from the Phoenicians and themselves. And when we look at the Phoenician alphabet, we can see that this is the exact same thing that you see in the Paleo-Hebrew script. It goes back to remember before the Tower of Babel, there was only one language, and this seems to be it, because you see it, this is their ancient script. When you look at their sailing ships, notice that the red and white stripes that are there, and they were very well known for who they were, the Sidonians, the Phoenicians, and they went everywhere around the Mediterranean. There are legends that they went all the way up to Great Britain and all over Europe, and they were very influential for the Greeks, and this is the ancient history of what happened after the flood. So go back to Mount Hermon here. Let's look at the significance again of Mount Hermon. When you study God's word, you can sometimes notice that it seems simply like one continuous narrative, like it's all going on and it kind of runs together. But the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Covenant, the Old Testament continually surface in the stories within the Gospels. We know this. And likewise, the stories in the Gospels are foretold and prophesied throughout the Tanakh. The Old and New Testament run concurrent. They run together perfectly. And one amazing example of this is found in the similarities between Moses' trip up Mount Sinai in Exodus 24 and Yeshua's experience on the Mount of Transfiguration, which was Mount Hermon in Matthew 17, and it's also found in Mark 9 and Luke 9. Now, in both stories, the main characters, Moses and Yeshua, Jesus, go up on a high mountain with God. 2, in both stories, 3 men go with the main character. Moses took Joshua and Aaron and Hur, and Yeshua took Peter, James, and John. And we see on the Mount of Transfiguration, this whole story, most people have no idea what's really going on here. This is happening in the devil's backyard at Mount Hermon when the Mount Transfiguration scene took place, which is the Lord sticking his finger in the eye of the devil right there. In both cases, a cloud covered the mountain at Mount Sinai and at Mount Hermon. And in Exodus 24:16 says, "For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the 7th day the Lord called to Moses." In both Matthew and Mark, the gospel writers are careful to tell us that it was 6 days that Yeshua took the disciples upon the mountain there at Mount Hermon. In both stories, with Moses on Mount Sinai and Jesus on Mount Hermon, nothing happened for 6 days, and then on the seventh day, God spoke. In both stories, God spoke from the cloud. In both stories, God's glory appeared and changed or transfigured the appearance of the principal figures as they were spoken to by God. If you look at Exodus 34, you see Moses' face shined and he had to put a veil over his face. And of course, Jesus was transfigured. The glory of God settled on both mountains, and it affected the people that were there. So there was Mount Sinai and there was Mount Hermon. So this is very central to the coming of the Messiah and his battle against Satan and the hordes of Satan that are here on earth today. So when we look at Mount Hermon, there was Caesarea Philippi, and we notice it's in the north. It can be seen from the Sea of Galilee. But we also see that the tribe of Dan, this is where they moved to, they migrated to from their original location in the south, and they came up to Mount Hermon to live there at Laish. So we see Caesarea Philippi, and we see the grotto of Pan that is there. This is the gates of Satan, or the gates of hell. And we see beneath all kind of occultic activity that was going on here. And in the grotto of Pan, this is where Jesus was looking at when he said the gates of hell will not prevail against the church, his people. Jesus said, on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not stop it. This is exactly the context of what Jesus is saying. We have power and authority over Satan and over the things that Satan desires to do. And Jesus went right to the stronghold of Satan and made this proclamation. So we see that Jesus has won the victory through the death, burial, and resurrection. He's at the right hand of the Father right now, getting things ready for his soon return. And as it was in the days of Noah, we're starting to see the uptick in occultic activity and the things that were going on in Mount Hermon and the tribe of Dan and the mystery Babylonian religions. These things are coming to the fore right now, and we're looking at them. We're seeing them take place right in front of our face in our culture. And this is why we're talking about Mount Hermon and the tribe of Dan in this presentation. So let's go back to the Mount of Transfiguration. If you remember, Jesus was talking, and he's talking to Moses and Elijah, and Peter, James, and John are watching, and they're looking, and they're blown away by what they're seeing. And we see that many things are happening there. Now, recall that the Hebrew word for settle is shakan. It means to settle temporarily, or to tent, or to abide in a temporary dwelling like a tent, or to tabernacle with. In Hebrew, the word mishkan is a derivative of shakan, which is how we say tent or tabernacle. Now, remember Moses' tabernacle in the wilderness. And when you look at Moses' tabernacle in the wilderness, remember that the literal presence of God was there manifest among the Hebrew children as they were 40 years in the wilderness. And this same idea we see that was there on Mount Sinai when Moses went up to the mountain where God was tabernacling there, and also Jesus was tabernacling on Mount Hermon. Is it possible that Peter realized that Yeshua was reconstructing the Moses story? It's very interesting. Was he thinking, what can we do to bring Shakan like the Moses story? So Peter thought, let's build something temporary, a Shakan. Let's put up some tents to duplicate the Sinai experience. Of course, we see that the Father intervened. Shakan is also where we get the word Shekinah. It means God's glory or the divine presence. This is what Peter was focused upon, and he messed up. Peter was not just trying to think of something to do. He knew the story of Moses coming down from Mount Sinai, and he wanted to commemorate it there. Then God intervened. Now, Luke added a wonderful exclamation point to his account of the Transfiguration. And it says in Luke 9:31, they spoke of his departure. Elijah and Moses were speaking to Jesus about the soon coming crucifixion, his death, burial, and resurrection. And they were getting him prepared for that. The Greek word for departure is exodus. And when Exodus is used in the New Testament, it is almost always used in conjunction with the actual Exodus story that we see with Moses and the children of Israel. So remember that there's all kind of prophetical significance of what we're seeing. And there's a lot of it that happened when Moses was with the children of Israel in the desert. Remember, you have Jesus who went down into Egypt as a toddler and came back and settled in Nazareth. Well, you also have the children of Israel came out of Egypt and settled in the promised land as well. They shadowed one another, and this is God's doing, and it's marvelous in our eyes because he has blinded the eyes of those who don't want to believe in the Messiah. Now, this use of this Greek word exodus wonderfully links Yeshua's death and resurrection with God rescuing his people out of Egypt. We see this at every Passover celebration. It's so symbolic and it's so powerfully there. It's amazing to me that people miss it, but it's always there. This further proves that Yeshua was fulfilling his role as the second Moses, as found in Deuteronomy 18:15, where the Lord told Moses that he will raise up another prophet that will be like me, and then said to listen to him. Remember when Jesus was on the Mount of Transfiguration, the Father specifically told Peter, after Peter said he wanted to build these three tabernacles, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." These words are precisely the same words that God used at the Transfiguration that he used with Moses in the wilderness. This is my Son, listen to him. Very profound and very powerful, and we need to pay attention to it. Now, the comparison of Mount Sinai with Mount Hermon, or the Mount of Transfiguration, gives us an interesting link between what happened in Genesis 6 with the Nephilim and the coming days of Noah pronounced in Matthew 24. Let's look at this. We look at Mount Hermon. This is the home headquarters of demonic activity, probably on planet Earth. And we understand the name Hermon means forbidden place. This is what the name actually means. And Jerome in the 4th century, who was the translator of the Latin Vulgate Bibles, interpreted Hermon as anathema. And that's where we get that term. It's a forbidden place, something forbidden, anathema. And the Hermon means forbidden place. Mount Hermon, which was named after Hermes, was a portal of entry where the Watcher class of fallen angels descended to earth in the book of Enoch. They swear upon the mountain that they would take wives among the daughters of men and corrupted mankind. This is where this all is centered at, right here at Mount Hermon. It's the home headquarters of every demonic activity you can imagine. And it's right there, visible from the Sea of Galilee in the northern part. Now it says in Genesis 6, Moses wrote, "The sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown." This race that was created by the Watchers, this angelic class, cohabitating with human women, created a race of giants, not human. Half human, half giant is not human. And this is something you need to understand, that these were a forbidden race. These were those that were called Nephilim, and we need to understand it. And it's very central to most of everything that you'll ever read about Bible prophecy, and much that's in the Bible. Most Christians are very ignorant of this. When you look in Genesis 6, who were the sons of God that it's talking about? The Benet Elohim. Understand that this is important. And as we finish this for today, we want to understand that the Benet Elohim, the sons of God, these were not humans. We're the sons of Adam as human beings. We're the sons and daughters of Adam. The Benet Elohim, these were this class of watchers that came down to Mount Hermon. And this is what we're looking at when we start to study Mount Hermon and we start to study the tribe of Dan. This is all central to everything that we're talking about. Well, we'll pick this up next week when we get into part 2 of 4 of the subject Mount Hermon and the tribe of Dan. It's very interesting. I hope I'm giving it justice, bringing it to you the way we are. But understand that all of this has come alive in these last days because Satan is getting very worried. He's nervous. The clock is ticking. He knows his time is short, and the things that he has put in place with his fallen race of demonic activity and so forth, understand this is just part and partial. But remember that in Jesus Christ we have authority over the works of Satan. We have authority over the devil, and we will live with Jesus forever in paradise, compared to where the tormenting place of the lake of fire is for the devil and his angels and all that choose to worship and serve him. So we'll leave it at that today. God bless you. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week when we do part 2 on Season of the Shofar.